kabar? Pastinya kabar baik, bukan? Bersama saya Romeo Dirk Junior di channel yang spesial menyajikan video kesaksian dan apologet Kristen yang sepasti bersumber dari data-data yang valid sesuai materi yang dibahas. Baik, kali ini saya akan menyajikan sebuah video yang diberi judul
His maleness was determined by this one Y that came from a source not a human male. Then they said, this blood is alive. And then they said, whose blood is this? I said, it's the blood of your Messiah. And I assure you those men's lives have changed.
Oke, teman-teman sekalian, saya ucapkan selamat menonton. Semoga melalui video ini Anda akan semakin dikuatkan iman percaya Anda pada Tuhan Yesus yang adalah juru selamat satu-satunya untuk semua umat manusia yang mau percaya pada Dia dan menerima sebagai Tuhan dan juru selamatnya pribadi. Terima kasih sudah mampir di channel saya. Kiranya Anda bahagia selalu bersama semua yang dicintai. God bless you. Bye.
The hope was to find a cave that might be down at the original ground level. And so the excavation began. Immediately in front of the cliff face, progressively deeper and deeper. Well, it was not long before there were uncovered several niches resembling recessed bookcases. And as the digging went deeper, there were found to be 3 of these. As the digging continued down, there was exposed, about 14 feet below the niches, a bedrock. This was a ledge extended 8 feet, about 2.5 metres out from the cliff face. And as the overlay of earth was cleared away, there appeared set into the rock a square shape. It appeared to be a plug, a stone plug. On close examination, there were found to be 2 finger niches with which to pull it up. And under that plug was found to be a post hole going down over 1/2 metre, actually 23.5 inches deep into the rock. A square hole with a plug sealing it over. We have this plug in our possession. There were several objects in the chamber. These were covered over with black, dry rotted animal skins. Over these were dry rotted wooden timbers, and on top of the timbers were stones. And Ron came along over the stones between them and the ceiling. He glimpsed a black stone case. It had a flat stone top which was cracked completely in 2. And there was found to be a crack in the ceiling. The crack was immediately above the crack in the lid of the stone case. The crack came down through the rock, leapt as it were through the air, then started again. Very, very odd. The crack extended through 20 feet, 6 metres of solid rock. The earth shook violently. At the moment of Jesus' death, the rock was torn open, and the blood came down out of his side, down past his legs, down over his feet. It poured into the cross hole and down through the crack in the rock that had been opened to receive it. Then straight onto the lid of the stone case, and it sprinkled onto the mercy seat inside that stone case, the mercy seat of the actual Ark of the Covenant. And how do we know that? Because the crack has been closely examined, and it shows copious amounts of blood having flowed down into it. It's still there, and it's human blood.
Picking up passengers from coast to coast. Faith is the key. Open the doors and board them. Don't need no ticket. You just thank the Lord. Yeah. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. Everybody sing it. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. Let's get together and feel alright. Let's get together and feel alright.
Good evening, Ron. Thank
Hi.
you very much for all three for seminars. Wonderful, thank you. My question is that you said that you had the blood of our Lord examined by the Israelis.
That's correct.
What was their determination of that? And
Okay. Now, we won't be able to take second questions. I'm sorry if you're on your second one, please just step out. I love you, but we're running out of time. Real quickly, okay. Dried blood is dead blood. Everybody knows that, all right? They can test the blood of the pharaohs, the mummies of the pharaohs, all right? There's certain things they can do. They cannot get a chromosome count by any method I'm familiar with, all right? Things keep changing. I don't profess to know everything. However, there's no way I know that you can get a chromosome count out of dead blood. You can get a DNA and some other things, but not a chromosome count, all right? That's done by living white blood cells. Now then, first of all, in this analysis, I took the blood into a laboratory in Israel. I asked one of the people I work with in antiquities, where is a good laboratory that does reliable work? And they said, such and such, such and such. I took it. I just said, please examine this blood and tell me what you can tell me about it. All right? They said, well, look, we're going to reconstitute it. We're going to put it in normal saline and keep it at body temperature for 72 hours with gentle swirling. All right, that's their business. That's great. I said, now I want to be there when you check it out. They said, fine. So I was back. They checked it out. I said, now, they said it's human blood. We can tell that. They did whatever tests they need to do. And then I said, take some of the white blood cells and put them in a growth medium and keep them at body temperature for 48 hours. And they said, well, that'll do no good because it's dead blood. I said, would you please do that for me? And they said, okay, we'll do it. So anyway, I said, I want to be there when you take it out and examine it. So I was back there. They took it out, examined it under a microscope, and the one technician called the other one over there, and then they called the boss over there, and they were talking Hebrew a mile a minute there for a little bit, and they looked at me and they said, Mr. Wyatt, this human blood only has 24 chromosomes in it. Everybody else has 46. You see, 23 from your mother, 23 from your father, 22 autosomes from your mother, 22 autosomes from your father. You get an X from your mother, you may get an X or a Y from your father, all right? This blood had 23 chromosomes from the mother's side, one Y chromosome only. You see, a child could not have developed if they hadn't had the autosomes from the mother. So all of his physical characteristics were determined by his mother's side of the family, her autosomes. His maleness was determined by this one Y that came from a source, not a human male. Then they said, this blood is alive. And then they said, whose blood is this? I said, it's the blood of your Messiah. And I assure you, those men's lives have changed.
As a dark field configuration. The light reflecting off the object is transmitted through the microscope and is magnified over 1,000 times. The image is then captured by a sensitive CCD camera and transmitted to a monitor for viewing at screen magnifications of up to 30,000x. Under these conditions, the tiny living particles can plainly be seen against a dark background. In 1996, my family and I made a trip to Nashville to visit the Wyatts. I brought along the microscope, which at that time was somewhat portable in its early stage of development, and set it up in the basement of the Wyatts' house. One evening, Mary Nell Wyatt asked me to take a look at some material from a burial cave to see if these tiny particles were present. Without my knowledge, one of the samples was actually the blood sample that Ron had taken from the Ark of the Covenant dig. The sample was placed under the microscope, and as the specimen began to come into focus, thousands of tiny particles, somatids if you will, became plainly visible. At that time, Mary Nell, who was standing behind me, began to weep. As I turned around and saw the expression on her face, I realized immediately that the sample we were looking at was actually the sample that Ron had found to be the blood of Christ. Okay, Mary Nell's going to take the sample and mix it with sterile water. And a test tube there that we've that'll be enough.
Okay.
And she's going to take some sterile water and a little bit, just some drops, all we need, Mary Nell. And then okay, so now that we've got the sample on the slide, we'll go ahead and focus into the sample and see what comes up on the screen here. And there they are, thousands of living particles, less than a quarter of a micron in size. The spores are maybe a half micron, and but most of those little particles you're looking at is 17,000 x magnified on the screen 17,000 times. You know, in the Bible it tells us that the life is in the blood, and there's little living particles that most people are unaware that are there. And this is the same thing we see in living blood. The scientist in Canada says that these things never die. The blood may dry up, but these things, he says, they're indestructible, And he says they are the basis of life.
The results we obtained in no way can be said to be proof that the specimen was the blood of Christ, but based on the location from which the specimen came, we believe it was what Ron believed it was. Years earlier, Ron had taken a blood specimen from the lid of the case which contained